Like this show and want to make your own? Let me tell you about Anchor. It's free, and they have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. And now you can even add any song from Spotify directly to your episodes. The possibilities are endless for what you can create, whether it's music analysis, your own radio show, or something the world's never heard before. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And you can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
Welcome to the Vocal Fries Podcast, the podcast about linguistic discrimination.
I'm Carrie Gillen.
And I'm Megan Figueroa. And today we are going to be talking about artificial intelligence generally, and more specifically, automatic speech recognition. So we have a guest here with us because Carrie and I do not know anything about... Okay, I shouldn't speak about Carrie's ignorance on a topic, but I don't know anything.
No, you were correct. I know nothing.
Okay, yes, okay. So we are joined by Dr. Rachael Tatman. She is a data preparation analyst at Kaggle, which is, according to its own Twitter account, the world's largest community of data scientists. Rachael has a PhD in linguistics from the University of Washington, where she specialized in computational sociolinguistics. And her dissertation, among other very cool things, showed the ways in which automatic speech recognition falls short when dealing with sociolinguistic variation, like dialects. Welcome, Rachael.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you. I feel like with automatic speech recognition, I don't know if other people feel this way, but I was in the camp where I didn't realize that I should care about what's happening with how automatic speech recognition is being made or to listen to voices. I didn't know that I had to care, and now I care. So hopefully we'll show listeners why we should care.
Yeah, so I can actually share one of my stories about automatic speech recognition. So one thing that's really difficult is children's voices, because obviously children are a different size and they have a lot of acoustic qualities that are different, but also children have a lot of individual variation. Like if you spend a lot of time with kids, like, what's a bink bink? Is it a blankie? Is it a bottle? You know?
Oh, yeah.
And when I'm dyslexic, and when I was in grade school, they tried to use automatic speech recognition to like help me type faster so that I could complete assignments and turn them in and not fail third grade.
Wow.
Yeah, it did not work well. I remember very distinctly that I tried to say the walls were dark and clammy because we were doing like a creative writing exercise, and it was transcribed as the wells were gathered and planning, which is... like, kind of close acoustically, but also there's some probably poor language modeling behind that, where they thought that that was a more likely sentence than the one that I'd started with. So.
Wow. Yeah, and let's define automatic speech recognition for the listeners and for myself. So what is automatic speech recognition?
So it's the computational task of taking in a acoustic signal of some kind and rendering it as speech. So when I say an acoustic signal, I mean specifically a speech acoustic signal, because also people work with like whale song and bird song and stuff. And so it gets used a lot in especially mobile devices. So if you know Google Now or Cortana, I don't know how many people actually use Cortana, or Bixby, which is Samsung's virtual assistant, or Siri, which is probably the most well-known one, they all rely on automatic speech recognition to sort of understand what you're saying and reply to your tasks. And also it gets used a lot in virtual assistants, which are those like Echo or Google Play, or Apple's launching one soon as well. I don't know how much you guys keep up with tech news, but these are little devices that sit in your home, and you can be like, hey, Siri, I guess. I don't know what the Apple one's going to be called, or okay, Alexa. I don't want to say it because I don't want to turn on everybody's Alexa.
Oh no, I think you just did.
I'm not sure what you meant by that question.
Go back to sleep, Alexa. So it's everywhere, is the point. People are incorporating it into new technologies. They're getting really excited about it. People are talking about incorporating it into testing for schools, for standardized testing. Yeah. People are talking about incorporating it into medical diagnostic tests. So things like, what's the semantic one where you have to like name a bunch of things that are similar before you move on?
I don't know.
It gets used for diagnosing a lot of things like schizophrenia and Alzheimer's and specific learning disorders. Semantic coherence test, maybe? Anyway, but people have been working on, using speech recognition for that, so incorporating it into this. People are using it for language assessment for immigration and visas.
Oh, wow.
Which is, a lot of very high-stakes places.
That's very high stakes. That's very important. Yeah.
And probably my favorite thing to be upset about in this realm is people incorporating NLP, which is natural language processing, which is more as text, and also automatic speech recognition, in these algorithms that you just like put information into and it tells you whether or not you should hire the person.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so very, very high stakes applications. And you may not always realize that your voice or your language is being used in this way.
Right.
So yeah.
That's I think that you can't see my face, but I'm horrified right now. So it's very important. There's a lot of practical applications that automatic speech recognition is being used for, and in all of these realms, there's possibility of discrimination.
Yeah. As far as I know, no one who has looked at an automatic speech recognition system or actually a text-based system specifically looking at performance across different demographic groups on a certain task has ever found that, nope, there's no difference. It doesn't matter. The system is able to deal super well with people of all different backgrounds. So looking specifically at speech, I've done a number of studies, and by a number I mean 2, and I'm sort of working off and on a third because I am also working full-time and this isn't part of my job. So I'm not speaking on behalf of my company or employer.
Right.
So if you're going to yell at anybody, yell at me personally. This is my, private individual thing. And what I found is that there are really, really strong dialectal differences. So differences between different regional, people who have different regional origins. And which dialects get recognized more or less accurately seems to be sort of... I'm having a hard time picking it apart, but I think it also is a function of social class. And it's fairly difficult to find speech samples that are labeled for the person's dialect and also their social class, and where you have like good sociolinguistic sampling methods. It's really hard to find large, annotated speech databases that you can do this sort of analysis with. But so I found really strong dialectal differences in accuracy with sort of general American or mainstream American English or mainstream US English or standardized American English. There's a lot of different terms for the sort of like fancy talk having the lowest error rate. And also I found that Caucasian speakers have the lowest error rate. Looking at Caucasian speakers, African American speakers, speakers of mixed race, and the study where I had race information, I only had one Native American speaker, so I had to exclude them because that's one data point is not a line.
Right.
But yeah, so that's worrying.
Right. And so what does it mean to have an error? What is the practical result of an error in speech recognition?
Yeah, so there are 3 types of errors. So one is where a word is substituted. So you say walls and it hears wells and transcribes that. Another one is deletion, where you say something like, I did not kill that man, and I did kill that man is transcribed. I should say that people don't use... people are still using hand stenographers for court cases, as far as I know. I don't think anyone in the legal system is using ASR, but yikes.
Better not.
Yeah, accuracy is important.
Yeah.
And there's also insertion. So when you think that you've heard a word and it wasn't actually there. So a lot of times words that are inserted are like function words, like the, and, of, sort of thing like that.
So deletion, insertion, and hearing it wrong, doing another word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, those are the only three transformations you can do. Yes.
Okay.
And word error rate is just for all the words, how many of them did you get wrong in one of these ways? So, I mean, just on a sort of frustration level, if you're using speech recognition as a day-to-day user and it doesn't work real great, that's annoying. And I'm sure if you guys ever use speech recognition, like on your phones, or I have a Google Home, and I'll use it for a timer a lot, and it's actually gotten better. It used to be really bad at hearing the word stop, like stop the timer. And I think that might be because of the ah merger that some people have. That's my pet theory, but it's gotten a lot better at understanding stop. So I would have to say stop like 5 times while I'm like standing in the kitchen with like cheese smeared on my arms up to my elbows or whatever.
That's really strange because there isn't a different stop. I have the merger, so I can't make the other word, but it doesn't exist anyway.
Yeah. It may be that the acoustic model is just sort of more... So speech recognition, I'm going to say it's sort of like generally, because people are futzing around with it a lot and messing it up, generally has 2 modules. So one is the acoustic model, which is sort of like what waveforms map to what sounds. And the other is the language model, which is what words are more likely. And when you put those together, out comes the other end through some fancy math. The most likely for some given set of input parameter, the most likely transcription, ideally. Right. And my guess is that if you're not specifically modeling the fact that some people have 2 vowels and some people have 1 vowel just sort of in that space, you may be less able to recognize those sounds generally because you think that there's just a lot of variation there. Especially since there's also the northern city shift that's like muddling that whole area as well. Sorry, should I assume a lot of sociophonetic background on the part of your speakers?
Our listeners, I was just going to say, maybe we should describe what the northern vowel shift is.
Yeah, so there are a number of vowel shifts in the United States, and if you think of individual vowels as being like little swarms of bees that are clustered around flowers, sometimes the swarms of bees move on, and the flower moves and the swarm follows after it, and different places have movement in different directions. So I don't know, is that a good... I'm using my hands a lot, and I know you guys can't see it, but is that clear?
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I'm not sure. It's a question.
I don't know. I mean, I like the analogy. I feel like is good.
I would look up chain shifts, vowel chain shifts, if I was listening to this. I'd just Google them, and then you'll see some nice pictures and arrows, and you'll be like, oh.
Yeah, we'll add something to the Tumblr to explain a little bit about vowel shifts, and also the merger we were talking about, because I can't replicate it. I can't do that open O, so
I can't either. I don't have it. So
it's caught, as in I caught the ball and then caught. Nope, I have them backwards again.
Yep. So we haven't asked you yet, but what is computational sociolinguistics?
So I don't think I made up the term, but I'm probably one of the first people to call myself that. Dong Nguyen she's currently at the Alan Turing Institute, has a fabulous dissertation that has a really nice review chapter that talks about sort of the history of this emerging field. And it is approaching sociolinguistic questions using computational methods. And it's also informing computational linguistics and, natural language processing and automatic speech recognition with sociolinguistic knowledge. So working on dialect adaptation, I think would fall within that. So that's when you take an automatic speech recognition system that works on one dialect and try to make it work good for other dialects as well. I've done some work on modeling variation in textual features by sort of social groups. So I've looked at political affiliation and punctuation and capitalization in tweets, and there's pretty robust differences, at least in the US, between oppositional political identities. I'm trying to think of other people's work, so it's not just like, here's a bunch of stuff that I've done.
So basically everyone's trying to model everything.
Basically. Or should be, hopefully. I think historically there hasn't been a lot of, I think sociolinguists are much better about knowing what's going on in computational linguistics than computational linguists are at knowing about what's going on in sociolinguistics. So I'm coming from sociolinguistics and coming to computational linguistics. I'm sort of trying to, you know, have a big bag of Lebov papers and just like toss them to people and be like, here you go.
Yes, and Lebov is a very famous sociolinguist, right?
He is, yes. I would call him the founder of variationist sociolinguistics, which is not the only school, but it is the school that I work in mainly.
Yeah, I think it's the most famous one as far as I know.
Yeah, I didn't know there were other ones. Of course there is.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of names. Mostly I'll come across it and I'll be like, oh, I guess like discourse analysis is a type of sociolinguistics.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
But different bent.
So how is automatic speech recognition trained to understand humans? I think you sort of already started to answer this, but maybe you can answer it a bit even more, if there is more to say.
Yeah, so there's, I mentioned there are two components. There's the acoustic model, and then there's the language model. And usually the language model is actually trained on texts. So you take a very, very, very large corpus. I think right now, I don't know about the standard, but the one I think most people would like to use would be the Google trillion word corpus, which is from scraped web text, or people will use the Wall Street Journal corpus, which is, you know, several 100 million words long. And you just sort of like know the probability of a certain set of words occurring in a certain order. So it's sort of the poor man's way of getting syntax. And there is also, I'll tell you about how it's traditionally done. And people are sort of replacing both the pronunciation dictionary and the acoustic model, which is sometimes includes the pronunciation dictionary, with big neural nets. We can talk about that in a little bit. But traditionally, the pronunciation dictionary was made by hand. So the Carnegie Mellon pronunciation dictionary or CMU pronunciation dictionary is probably the best known one for American English. You know, people just transcribe words, and if there's one that you need that's not transcribed, you just add it.
And what's a pronunciation dictionary?
So it is a list of words and then how they're pronounced. So just the phones. Okay. So like cat would be k-at. Those three sounds in order. Right. Yeah. Then the acoustic model takes the waveform and tells you the probability of each of those sounds, right? So it's like, well, I'm pretty sure it's but I guess it could also be through a process of transformations. And people recently have been just taking a speech corpus, usually one that's labeled so you know what words are spoken, and then just using all of that data and sort of shoving it into a neural net, which is a type of machine learning algorithm. It's a family of machine learning algorithms, and people use different types and flavors, and they have different structures. And what neural nets are really, really good at is finding patterns in the data and recognizing those same patterns later without you having to tell them to do it, right? They sort of learn it themselves from just the way that the information is organized. And they've been really, really good and useful in image processing in particular. So being able to look at a photo and be like, here is an apple, here is an orange, and I have circled them helpfully for you. They're really good at that. But as it turns out, there is more structure in language than there is in other types of data.
Shocking.
Yeah.
I mean, it is to some people. I've had a lot of, sort of frustrating conversations where people were like, but it works really good on images. And I'm like, yes, but language is different. And if it weren't, we wouldn't need linguistics, right? People wouldn't need to study language their entire lives if it was just like images, but in sound, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Which I think is probably not news to any listeners of this podcast, but definitely it is news to some people. So neural nets are really good at seeing things that they've seen before, or identifying the types of things they've seen before. And if they see new things, they're not so good at it. So I think that's really where a lot of the trouble with dialect comes in, because sociolinguistic variation is very systematic between dialect regions, and one person can have multiple dialects as well. I don't want to make it sound like, you just sort people into your dialects and then apply the correct model and then boom, everything's correct all the time. Because people have tried that and it works better than not doing anything, but it's still not. I don't know. There's a lot of work to do, and I don't want to make it sound like speech research engineers are just sort of like fluffing around and not knowing about language, because they do, but it's difficult, and it's hasn't, I think, been a major focus for a lot of people recently, and I'm hoping that it will become more of a research focus.
Yeah, you said something in one of your interviews that I wanted to read here that I liked. So you say that generally the people who are doing the training aren't the people whose voices are in the data set. You'll take a data set that's out there that has a lot of different people's voices, and it will work well for a large variety of people. Mm-hmm. I think the people who don't have sociolinguistic knowledge haven't thought about the demographic of people speaking would have an effect. I don't think it's maliciousness. I just think it wasn't considered. Yeah, so I just think it wasn't considered part is it's how I felt, actually. Like, I obviously very much care that people aren't discriminated against in every aspect of life, but I just didn't think about speech recognition.
Yeah, and I think we have this idea that, like, oh, a computer's doing it, so it's not going to be biased. Like,
right? Yeah.
Which, like, that's nice. That's nice to believe, right? That you have, like, the ethical computer from Star Trek, but bias is built into all machine learning models. Like, it's one of the things you study in a machine learning class. You talk about bias and variance, and it's there in the model, and it's there in the data. And just sort of pretending that it can go away if you just keep adding more data is a little bit of a problem for the people who are actually using the system, and it doesn't work as well for them as it should, maybe.
It's also very naive.
Yeah, I mean, humans are the ones that are doing it, right? Like, we're behind machines, so of course there's biases. And I was thinking, I just, like I've said, I've never thought about this before, but I don't use Siri because Siri does not understand me very well at all. So I've just kind of given up.
I miss you, Megan.
But I didn't take the next step. I didn't take the next step and think, oh, why is this the case that she's not understanding me very well?
Yeah. Because she understands me pretty well. I have a pretty standard North American accent, so
a little bit of the Canadian shift.
I do, but it's not enough to trick Siri, apparently. And also, my accent has shifted somewhat since living in the States for over 9 years, so... But I knew that speech recognition did have a problem with at least some dialects, because there's a fairly famous skit from Bernstein, a Scottish sketch comedy show, where he's just saying 11, and it's like one of the words where in a Scottish accent, actually 11 is pretty close. So the speech recognition should have been able to pick it up. But most of the sketches is them speaking in Scottish dialect that I think many Americans would not understand, actually.
You ever tried voice recognition technology?
No.
They don't do Scottish accents.
11.
Could you please repeat that?
11.
11. 11.
11.
Could you please repeat that?
11. If you don't understand the lingo, away back home to your own country.
Ooh, is that talk now, is it? Away back to your own country?
Oh, don't start, Mr. Bleeding Heart. How can you be racist to a lift?
Please speak slowly and clearly.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a really funny sketch, and if you haven't seen it, I will post it, because I think it's funny.
I don't know what it is about me. I don't know vocal fry would affect it at all. I'm also kind of mumbly. I try not to be mumbly on the podcast, obviously, but in my normal everyday life, I am a mumbler, so that might be it. And I expect Siri to understand my mumbles, but she don't, so I gave up.
But see, that's part of the problem, because I don't know for sure, but I would be beyond shocked if... because I know that, like, for sure Google has the ability to sort of, it retains the speech samples that you send them, and I'm sure that they fold them back into their training data. So if you're not using it because it doesn't understand you, it's pretty much never going to understand you is the unfortunate thing. And I think there's also, I think that's really part of the reason that there's, I think, pretty strong class effects. And this is me having, you know, a science hunch that I haven't really banged out yet in some experimental work. But I think that people who have a higher socioeconomic status, and particularly like professional class, mobile, not rural, the other one.
Urban.
Yeah, thank you. Especially professional, mobile, urban people have, I'm almost positive, higher recognition rates, correct word rates.
Well, I mean, you mentioned something about how the language model was like taking in things like the Wall Street Journal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, wouldn't that affect it too? Just like, I mean, that's not your acoustic signal, but it's the way you speak. I don't know. Carrie,
yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
Fiduciary seems to be a fairly common word, and you know, that humans use all the time, so I'm gonna look for that one.
But yeah, I would be very surprised if class didn't play a role. It always does.
Yeah.
In everything that we talk about, there's something about class going on too. But we don't think about it as much in North America as we should.
You know, we really don't, especially since it's like wrapped in with race and ethnicity so much.
Mm-hmm.
I act like I know anything beyond the States. I'm just very American in the States. Yeah.
Well, I think it's like very much like the top level thing that people think about with language variation in the UK for sure.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting.
There's like RP and then like those weird regional dialects that we don't like, and that's like as a person not from the UK, that's sort of like the judgments that I've gotten from consuming popular media.
I mean, it used to be worse because the BBC used to only have received pronunciation with their reporters, but now you'll hear regional varieties. Still the most prestigious versions of those varieties, but at least you'll hear Irish dialects now. So things are slightly better.
You'd hope so. So ASR is trained to understand humans. So you're feeding them these data sets. And I didn't know this, but I guess, so like you said, if I talk to Siri, I'm also feeding into a data set?
Yeah. That seems very likely to me. Again, I don't know for sure, and this may be something that's Googleable, and it, like you could find using a search engine, and it may be something that you could not find using a search engine. But just sort of like the other thing about neural nets is because they're good at seeing things they've seen before, they get really good if you have a lot of data, So I have not yet seen the company that would sort of ignore free data that people were giving to it to improve model performance.
Do you have examples of automatic speech recognition failing to understand people that we can kind of give the listeners so they can kind of see the problem?
I can give you one from my life, which continues to drive me nuts. So I'm from the South, and I do have a general American sort of professional voice that I use, but especially if I'm just sort of, you know, relaxing with friends or with my family, I definitely sound more Southern. And one of the things that happens in the South and also in African American English is nasal place assimilation. So if you have a nasal after a stop, which sounds like k, t, g, b, d, you will change the nasal, so like or to whatever the thing in front of it was. So I would say bean bag as beam bag, especially in like a, you know, informal setting, or like handbag as handbag.
Oh yeah.
You put things in your handbag. And I think it's a fairly common thing. And Google used to always search for beanbag when I wanted to know about beanbags. Because I was doing research to get, I currently have one. I just turned to look at it, a really big beanbag chair. Because they're very comfy. I like them. But it kept telling me about beanbags, which are not a thing. And it just drove me up the wall. Because lots of people do this thing. This is a normal speech process.
Very common.
Also, a ham bag, a bag of hams.
Ham bag.
That's, I mean, might be something that people have. But that's...
Well, I guess like a Smithfield ham does come in a bag. Like it comes in like a little canvas bag. But...
I mean, I guess that's where it's trying to get you, but that's not what you... That's funny. Okay, so how do we solve this problem then? What should we be thinking about when we develop automatic speech recognition databases and such? Who should be involved?
Yeah, sociolinguists. Definitely hire sociolinguists. That's sort of my general go-to drum. And it's a hard problem. I don't want to pretend that, you know, a sociolinguist looks at it and they're like, fix this parameter, and then suddenly it works great for everyone. Because the fact of minority languages or language varieties in particular is that they're minority because fewer people use them, right? So if you are trying to optimize performance and accuracy for the model as a whole, and you raise it for the people who are from minority groups, whatever those may be, if you are using just sort of like the one model, that will lower it for, you know, your majority language speakers. So just adding more data isn't necessarily going to be the fix. People have been working on this for a long time, and it's a very hard problem, and I have nothing but respect for everyone who's working on this. There's a couple of approaches that people are doing. So one is to train multiple models on different stable language varieties. So in the US, I might train one on West Coast generally, and as far as that is a single language variety, I'd probably train one on sort of, you know, the Northeast, one on the northern cities, so Chicago, Michigan sort of area. Chicago's in Illinois, Michigan sort of area, one on the South, one on sort of the Mid-Atlantic region. And then select one of those models based on whichever would most accurately represent the person who's speaking. So that's one approach. Another approach is to actually take the model and then change it for every single person's voice. So that will capture dialectal variation, but it will also capture individual variation. And the reason that your phone doesn't do that automatically is because it is very computationally intensive. These models are very big. They have a lot of information in them. They have a lot of parameters. And to change those, it takes a lot of, you know, just like a lot of raw processing power. So that's not really feasible to do for individual people. As it stands, I don't know, maybe in 5 years it will be completely feasible and we'll all have like GPUs falling out of our pockets everywhere we go. I don't know. That's another approach that some people have taken. I don't know, maybe with some fancy new ensembling, which is where you take multiple different types of models and sort of like stick them together like, what are those, connects? And they sort of like build like a pipeline, and then you shove the data all the way through the pipeline and all the different models that are connected together. And those have been getting really good results lately. So maybe some sort of like clever ensembling where you do something like demographic recognition and then something like sort of like shifting your language model a little bit. And I don't know what people are gonna come up with.
Okay, so this is the future, right? Like this is the future that millennials want or something. I don't know what it is. This is the future liberals want. Okay, so if this is the future, I'm thinking about the fact that in 30 years we're going to be a majority minority country.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're on our way to this just becoming a bigger and bigger problem.
Definitely.
The fact that Siri or Alexa, has trouble understanding people that aren't in this like white
super privileged small group.
Yeah, right. And there's a gender bias too, right? It's males that are understood,
and we're the majority.
Yeah. So
yeah, I just want to quickly intercede here. So I did in some earlier work find that it was more accurate. So specifically YouTube's automatic captions were more accurate for men than women. But I think because I couldn't replicate that result, the problem there was actually signal to noise ratio. So women tend to be a little bit quieter because we're a little bit smaller. So there's just, if you are speaking at the same sort of like effort level in the same environment, there's just going to be a little bit more noise in the signal for women because we're not quite as loud. So yeah, I don't know that clever signal processing can fix that. Yes, and I'm going to keep working on this, and who knows, I might find out that actually there are, you know, really strong differences, and maybe it can't deal with things that women do more. I was going to say vocal fry, but I've seen no evidence that women fry more than men, which I'm sure you've talked about at length.
Yeah. Yes,
we did. That was our first episode. Yes. Everybody does it.
Yeah.
Leave us alone.
Leave it alone. get the fuck off my vocal fry. So yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is like, this is something that we should all very much care about because, like Carrie said, everyone else is the majority. If it's best trained on white men that are in higher socioeconomic classes, like that's not the majority. You know, and it sounds like we need to have people in the room that, like, because like you said, you don't think it was considered when they were making these data sets. We need people in the room that are like, wait, you know, I come from this community where, you know, that's not how we talk. That's not, this is not going to work for me or us.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I just definitely want to plug representation too. We need more people in the room. Yeah.
Definitely. And this is, so I've been talking about English because that's what I know about, and specifically American English. I don't want to get into British dialectology because that's like crazy complex. But like this is also a problem in other languages. So Arabic dialects are incredibly different from each other.
Right.
And now I'm thinking about people that are bilingual. So that, you know,
or bidialectal.
Yeah, for sure. And that's going to be something else that we would want automatic speech recognition to recognize. So
yeah, absolutely. I can give people sort of something that you can do right now is that Mozilla, which is the company that owned the Firefox, continues to own, I think, the Firefox web browser, is currently crowdsourcing a database of voices and just like voice samples. So you can head over to that website, for which there is a link that I for sure can't find. I think it's called like the Mozilla Common Voice Project, but don't quote me on that unless it's right.
Yeah, we'll put it somewhere.
Yeah. Anyway, so Mozilla is doing a collection of voices of people, and they're specifically trying to get people from different demographic backgrounds for specifically this problem, for knowing demographic information about someone, for having speech samples for them. And they're also having people manually check the recording. So if this is something that's interesting and you want to listen to a lot of voices, I'd recommend, you know, heading over there and checking it out.
So they are crowdsourcing automatic speech recognition. Okay. I guess that's a good idea. I guess it's how you get the most variation in the people that reply.
One thing that I have found in my own work, and other computational linguists have found as well, is that we know a lot about variation in speech, but a lot of the same variation also exists in text. And a lot of the text that you produce in your day-to-day life, especially if it's anywhere online, is getting fed into a lot of natural language processing tools. And there are also problems with those. So things like identifying what language someone is using is not as good. Yeah,
I noticed that on Twitter a lot. It wants to translate from French all the time.
Yeah.
Twitter's language ID is a hot mess.
And it's never French. It's never French. In fact, sometimes it's English. I'm like, what is going on?
I've had Estonian, like translate from Estonian. Yeah.
Estonian tends to show up a lot. I'm trying to think of, I actually have started doing some like very lackadaisical data collection. So I think it seems to work on a character level. So it tends to be fairly good at languages that have a unique character set. So it tends to be fairly good at like Thai, but like related Germanic languages, it does not. And that's Bing. That's on Microsoft. They're the back end there, so I 100% blame them.
Yeah.
Maybe if they hadn't gutted their research teams, they would be able to do this better.
Hint, hint.
Okay, so that is something that we can do immediately. Do you have something like really poignant you want to say about why this is all important? Like what's the takeaway message? Because we've been talking this whole time about why it's important, but what do you think is the takeaway?
I don't know. It's important to hear people's voices, both literally and metaphorically.
There we go. There's the money shot.
That is the money. See, that's what we wanted.
Yes, it's important to hear people's voices. Okay.
It is.
I think that's a good place to end.
Yeah, because that was it. Unless you have anything else, Rachel.
Ooh. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I hope that I I don't know, I use my hands a lot, so hopefully a lot of the things that I was saying with my hands, I was also saying with my voice.
Yeah. Yeah, I realized that at like our first episode, I was using my hands, and now I'm just like, my hands don't even move. So I think it comes with some experience of my 4 episodes that I have done. So 5 episodes.
5 episodes.
Yeah.
This is our 6th.
Yeah.
Ooh,
yeah.
Lucky number 6.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Rachel, for talking with us today.
You're welcome.
That was awesome.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
No, I learned so much. I was so ignorant on this subject. So thank you. Hopefully this will be of interest to people that have no idea, but also to our listeners that really like speech recognition stuff. I know that they're there. So this is very exciting. All right, cool. I guess we want to leave everyone with one message, which is don't be a fucking asshole.
Don't be an asshole. Bye. The Vocal Fries podcast is produced by Chris Ayers for Halftone Audio. Theme music by Nick Granum. You can find us on Tumblr, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Vocal Fries Pod. You can email us at vocalfriespod@gmail.com.